could agree that we're in a time where reading labels, knowing what you're putting in your home and your body couldn't be any more important. Now, how many of you buy food, grocery shop this day and age? You might be new to symbols like this and not exactly know what that means. Bioengineered ingredients, GMO, I know it's on your radar. For a lot of us, it's a mystery on what this exactly means. If you're brand new here, welcome to our amazing community where we do prepping tips, emergency preparedness how-tos, and most importantly, we go over news awareness. Stuff that's happening that might not be on mainstream. If you find value in that, be sure to hit the notification bell so you guys can stay up to date. Let's jump into this one. So now before we get started, tell me, have you seen bioengineered ingredients, bioengineered food in the grocery store? Because if you've been paying attention like I have, you would notice that it is consuming the entire grocery store. And what exactly does it mean? Because you can almost not even avoid it. No kidding, guys. When I made this video, I was finding it 50% of the time. Now, a couple months later, it's nearly on everything that I see. A scary thing that you guys should know is there's lots of loopholes, lots of labeling tricks. They stay within the restrictions, so it's hard for you to know. And there's other applications, loopholes, where they don't even need to list it. And I'm gonna tell you about that. And then there's the topic of discussion of what exactly they're slipping into this. And do you really know what's going into your body or eating? Now, as a consumer, we're like, what is this new law? It's fairly new. I'd say like within the last year, people started noticing this. Now, when it comes to the law and food manufacturers, they've known that this has been coming for quite a while. I mean, we're talking about a national bioengineered food disclosure law, and this is dated 2018. Big players have been well aware that this is what was coming. And this law signed in 2016. The mandatory date for the disclosure to actually be in effect was January 1st of 2022. What does that tell you? Now, the important part is the language. How is the language read in this law? What is bioengineered food? Bioengineered foods that contain a detectable genetic material that has been modified through certain lab techniques and cannot be created through conventional breeding or found in nature. Now, the key word there is detectable genetic material. So that means if it's labeled, the key word there is detectable. So know this, it can be there, but as long as it's not detectable, it doesn't need to be labeled. We're talking about stuff made in a lab that cannot be found in nature anywhere. Now, not only must it be detectable, but they have a very precise definition of what can be detected. Now, in this description, they're very specific. It has to be detectable genetic material via a test. If it's detectable via a test, they have to label it. If not, they don't. Well, let's look at what the non-GMO project says GMO means. And what you're gonna see here is a very generic, broad explanation. GMO, genetically modified organism, living organisms whose genetic material has been artificially manipulated in a laboratory through genetic engineering, creating combinations of plant, animal, bacteria, and virus genes that do not occur in nature, or through traditional crossbreeding methods, products of new genetic engineering techniques. For example, CRISPR, TALEN, RNA interference, ODM, and gene drives are also GMOs. Did you notice the vague term of virus genes? I did. So as you can see, super vague, which could include any kind of gene modification that's done in a lab. And how about a little clarity on genetically modified organisms? Includes any product made through genetic engineering and any ingredients derived from that product. So now at this point, you guys might be a little confused. Is GMO the exact same as genetically modified? Is it and or? What's the difference? Let's give you guys a couple examples so you better understand this. Oil, for example. Lots of people use cooking oils in the kitchen. Now, many of you might know soybeans are oftentimes GMO seeds, genetically modified soybeans. So you have the plant and then the oil that's derived from the soybeans, which were originally GMO soybeans. So essentially, the oil that you're using is a GMO oil. But remember, the definition of bioengineered is it detectable? So when you're using essentially a genetically modified GMO seed that then goes and gets refined into an oil, and you're using that oil and cooking up your meal, by verbiage, you're not going to be able to detect the bioengineered part of this Therefore, it doesn't get labeled bioengineered. Starts off a GMO, goes through a GMO plant, then turns into an oil, gets refined, goes through processing, no longer detectable, but it did come from a GMO plant. But since it's not detectable through a certain test, it doesn't have to be labeled bioengineered. Here's even a better scenario. Say you have cows that were fed through their lifetime a genetically modified, say, alfalfa plant or corn. Now the non-GMO project is going to say, even though it ate GMO, it took on GMO products as the cow was raised, and this cow meat is GMO, by the time it hits the store shelf through a certain test, as long as it's not detectable by a certain test, they do not have to label it bioengineered. So some of you might already be at the point where I'm not touching anything GMO. And then we come to the day and age where there's so much that it's detected in this specific test that they have to label it. But how are you're gonna go to the store and you're like, how do I really know if it has bioengineered food, if it's GMO? Is everyone labeling it, and will I be able to find it on the label? Now, before I get to that important information, if you guys are finding value, hit the like button. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you missed either one of these videos, this is where I actually take you through stores, show you examples, give you guys the real life insight on what's really going on. I'll leave those videos at the end screen, also in the description down below. If you haven't seen them, you're gonna find out why they have 1 million views. Okay, so back to it. We're going to the store. How are we gonna know that this has bioengineered foods or GMO related? Because it gets trickier. Even though the stores are getting ran over by tons of labels that you're gonna see bioengineered ingredients, not all of them are gonna be easy to spot, and I'm gonna show you why. The National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Act requires producers to do one of 4 things. The first way is the easy way, being able to read it. It's gonna say, contains bioengineered ingredients, or it's gonna say, this is a bioengineered food, right on the product packaging near the ingredients list. Now these are gonna be the easy scenarios because you can just pick it up and look. And trust me, if you haven't looked lately, you're gonna walk around and wonder what the heck you can buy if you're not wanting to eat that. Number 2, you're gonna see this logo that you've probably seen. The food product can include a bioengineered symbol that USDA has created in the same location, and they're gonna look like this. I've showed you guys these little circles on other foods before, so it may not be listed back by the ingredients, but it might have this little emblem. So it might not be listed back there by the ingredients. You gotta turn the can around and see if you see this emblem. Number 3, and this is where it starts getting a little grayscale, they can put a QR code on the can or on the package that you are expected to have a smartphone so that you can scan it, which takes you to a website where you could eventually find the information. So now you guys are starting to see how this could get a little fuzzy. And pay attention, when you go to the store and you're looking at food products, try to keep your eyes peeled for that QR code. You're gonna see them. And worse than that, number 4, they can put a phone number on the can or on the package that allows you the option to call or text to try to gain that information through reaching out through a phone number. 1 of 4 to comply. Kind of crazy. So as you can see with 3 and 4, that's what makes this a food disclosure law versus a food labeling law. So is it really a food labeling law or is it a food disclosure law? Because for consumers to have to be able to see it on a label versus it just being available for us to find, those are definitely the things that you should know about. And what you're also gonna find is they don't have to tell you what the bioengineered food ingredient is, they just have to tell you that it's got a bioengineered food. And that takes us back to all the controversial conversations that are being had that have to do with what exactly are they putting in our food. So you might be asking, if it's basically the same thing, GMO, genetically modified, with very vague and drastic differences, why did they go with this new term of bioengineered food? It might have to do with all the controversy and backlash they got with the whole GMO end of things. Possibly, or it has to do with the level and amount of detectable stuff that's going to be going into these foods. Because I'm sure you guys have seen most of the chicken being made in laboratories and big vats that comes out. If you really examine your chicken from most places, it's not going to look like chicken. It's going to look stringy like this, like chicken you've never had before. And that goes with beef too. When you think that you're eating a steak and it's actually been bonded together with some certain stuff I go into other videos with, and then you find out with a little research that that big huge tri-tip that you bought at Costco wasn't actually a cut.
Industry-wide secret butchers don't want you to know about. Major suppliers have been caught using a special product known as meat glue to stick together scraps of meat to sell as prime cuts.
Things are changing and things are changing fast. I did a video right up here on the beef stuff. So as you can see, going with the new term bioengineered with a specific definition gave them more freedom and a lot more control on how this law was going to be rolled out. Another huge topic with this is loopholes. How about the organizations that don't even need to label it? Yeah, that's right. Not everyone has to label it. And what are those called? Exemptions. And there's a long list of exemptions on who exactly has to be doing this labeling. Exemptions, guys. And if you have a perspective like I do, we call those loopholes. Let me tell you about a couple of the big ones. One is the term threshold, the amount that you have in there. In section 66.5 establishes the threshold of inadvertent or technically unavoidable presence of bioengineered substance of up to 5% for each ingredient. Up to 5% per ingredient. What do you guys think about that? Here's another one you're not gonna like. If the product contains the first ingredient being meat, poultry, some type of meat, they are exempt and not affected by this bioengineered law. And why is that? Because meat products are regulated by a different set of USDA statutes that have different requirements and different laws. Maybe more reason to watch this video if you guys missed that one, because you might be wanting to double down on how you think about your meat shopping. And the last one is also huge, because as you guys might think that everyone needs to follow the same set of rules, it's not like that. How many of you guys go to restaurants, food trucks, smaller establishments, smaller markets? Yeah, a lot of these laws are aimed at larger manufacturers. Big companies. Exempts very small food manufacturers from disclosure requirements of the NBFDS. Section 661 defines very small food manufacturers as food manufacturers with annual receipts less than 2.5 million. 2.5 million. Lots of businesses out there under 2.5 million. Like I said, food trucks, cafes, little cafeterias, small grocery stores, bakeries, small fast food chains. Lots of places out there can fall in the category of being a small business under 2.5 million. Now, of course, let me add, if you do extensive research on all these official sites, you'll find that bioengineered food or GMO food is supposedly not harmful for you, not bad for you, and deemed safe to eat. And if you're anything like me, I've done other extensive research, you would strongly disagree. If you guys haven't seen either one of these videos, very good videos that give you a little bit more explanation and a little bit of field, and I take you into the field and actually show you some of this stuff and also give you some good options on how to avoid it. If you found this valuable, please share this. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Let me know some more facts, some more stuff that you guys might want me to talk about down in the comments below. As I know more, I'll let you guys know. Keep prepping, keep learning, keep doing. We'll see you on the next one.